picture this. It's a hot August afternoon in Colorado. A man is standing on his front porch, talking to a news reporter. He's wearing a t-shirt, arms crossed, kinda shifting his weight back and forth. He looks normal. He tells the camera, "I just want them back. I want them home." He's talking about his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their two little girls, Bella and Celeste. They vanished into thin air. But here's the thing. Usually when a dad is pleading for his family's return, you see panic, you see tears, you see a man falling apart. But this guy, Chris Watts, he just looked like he was trying to remember lines from a script. Within 48 hours of that interview, the world would find out that while he was pleading for their return, he knew exactly where they were, because he put them there. Welcome back to Alfenom. Today, we are peeling back the layers of the perfect American family to find the monster hiding in plain sight. This is the Chris Watts story. To really get why this happened, we have to talk about the Watts brand. And I'm not using that word lightly. If you were scrolling through Facebook in 2018 and stumbled upon Shanann's profile, you'd swear you were looking at the perfect American family. I mean, it was curated to perfection. They had this massive 4,100 square foot home in Frederick, Colorado. 5 bedrooms, granite countertops, the works. There was a shiny Lexus in the driveway. Shanann was constantly live streaming, sometimes multiple times a day. She was a promoter for Lavelle, the company behind those Thrive patches you see people wearing. She was the definition of a boss babe, high energy, always on, always selling this idea that their life was amazing. And Chris? In these videos, he was the ultimate prop. He was the quiet, doting dad in the background, making dinner or tossing the kids in the air. Shanann called him her rock. She praised him constantly online. To the outside world, he was the lottery pick of husbands. But folks, when you turn off the ring light, the reality was grim. Let's talk numbers, because the math wasn't mathing. Behind that big house and the luxury car, they were drowning. They had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy back in 2015, just 3 years before the murders. They were in debt to the tune of $70,000. And I'm not talking student loans. I'm talking credit card debt from trying to keep up appearances. They were house poor in the worst way possible. The Homeowners Association fees alone were killing them. They were being sued by their HOA for missed payments. So you have this massive financial pressure cooker. And then you have the personality clash. Shanann was type A. She was dominant. She ran the show. She handled the finances, the schedule, the decisions. Chris? He was passive. He was a go-with-the-flow guy. For years, he seemed okay with being a passenger in his own life. But in the summer of 2018, the dynamic shifted. Shanann took the kids to North Carolina to visit family for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That is a long time apart. While she was there, things got messy. There was drama with Chris's parents, the infamous Nutgate incident over ice cream and allergies, which made Chris pull away even further. While Shanann was in North Carolina, frantically texting him, trying to fix the rift between him and her, Chris was back in Colorado, and he wasn't missing them. He was hitting the gym. He was going out. And he was getting a taste of a life where he didn't have to answer to anyone. By the time Shanann got back, the man waiting for her wasn't the husband she left. He was cold. He was distant. Shanann texted her friends saying, "He won't touch me. He doesn't want me." She was buying self-help books, desperately trying to save a marriage that Chris had already mentally incinerated. Now, we have to introduce the catalyst, the match that lit the fuse. Her name was Nicole Kessinger. She was a safety officer at Anadarko Petroleum, the same company where Chris worked. They met in June, just 2 months before the tragedy. And folks, the speed at which this relationship moved. It was like 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. I'm not here to shift blame. Chris is the one who committed the crimes. But you cannot tell this story without understanding the effect this affair had on his psyche. Suddenly, Chris Watts wasn't the tired suburban dad with financial problems. In his eyes, and in Nicole's eyes, he was desirable. He was exciting. This triggered a massive physical transformation. We're talking about a guy who was known for having a bit of a dad bod. Suddenly he's using Shanann's Thrive patches. He's working out twice a day. He drops a ton of weight. He starts dressing better. He stops wearing his wedding ring. He was basically going through a teenage phase or a midlife crisis at the age of 33. He told Nicole the oldest lie in the book. He told her he was separated. He said he and Shanann were living in the same house but barely talking, that the divorce was almost final. He painted a picture of a dead marriage to justify his new life. Now, let's zoom in on the weekend of August 11th and 12th. This is critical. Shanann was away on a business trip in Arizona. For Chris, this was a test run of his new bachelor life. While Shanann was gone, Chris took the girls to a birthday party for a friend's kid. Witnesses at that party said something was off. Chris was usually the hands-on dad, the one playing on the floor. But that day, he was glued to his phone. He looked at his own daughters like they were inconveniences, like they were baggage he wanted to leave at the claim check. That Saturday night, he got sloppy. He took Nicole Kessinger out for a date to the Lazy Dog restaurant. And get this, he paid for the dinner using the joint debit card he shared with Shanann. The notification popped up on Shanann's phone while she was in Arizona. When she asked him about it, he panicked. He lied and said he bought salmon for himself. Salmon? For $60? It was a clumsy lie, but it shows how checked out he was. He wasn't even trying to cover his tracks properly anymore. Then comes the night of August 12th. Shanann is trying to get home. Her flight is delayed again and again. She's exhausted, she's pregnant, and she's stressed. She finally lands in Denver after midnight. Her friend, Nicole Atkinson, drives her home. At 1:48 a.m. on August 13th, the doorbell camera captures Shanann walking up to the front door. She drags her suitcase up the steps, pauses for a second, and walks inside. That footage is haunting because it's the last time anyone ever saw her alive. She probably thought she was walking into an argument. She probably thought she was coming home to a husband who didn't love her anymore. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. So, Monday morning rolls around. It's August 13th. Now, you have to understand Shanann's baseline behavior to get why this morning was so weird. Shanann was a social butterfly. She was glued to her phone. She was the type of person who texted you back before you even finished typing. Her business depended on it. But that morning, it was radio silence. Nicole Atkinson, who had dropped Shanann off at 1:48 a.m., woke up and sent her a text. No reply. She called, straight to voicemail. At first, she thought, okay, maybe she's just sleeping in, she's pregnant, she's tired. But as the hours ticked by, that excuse started to wear thin. Here is the massive red flag that everyone talks about. Shanann had a critical OB/GYN appointment that morning. She wanted to hear the baby's heartbeat. Nicole knew, she knew in her bones, that Shanann would never, ever miss that appointment. When the doctor's office called Nicole to say Shanann was a no-show, that pit in her stomach turned into full-blown panic. Nicole didn't sit around. She didn't wait for permission. She drove straight to the Watts house in Frederick. She gets there around noon. She tries the front door code. Now catch this detail. Nicole knew the code. She punched it in, but the door wouldn't open. Why? Because the manual latch, the one you can only lock from the inside, was engaged. That meant someone was inside, or someone had locked it and left through the garage. She walked around the house, peering through the windows, and what she saw made her blood run cold. She saw Shanann's flip-flops right by the front door. She saw the kids' car seats in the Lexus. Guys, a mom does not leave the house without the kids' car seats. It just doesn't happen. Nicole calls Chris, and this conversation, it's infuriating. She's frantic, she's crying, she's telling him, I can't find Shanann. And Chris? He sounds like he's bored. He sounds annoyed, like she's interrupting his day. He tells her, don't call the police. I'm about an hour away. Just wait for me. He was stalling. He was buying time. He needed to get home to clean up. But Nicole Atkinson is a hero. She didn't listen to him. She hung up the phone and dialed 911 immediately. She told the dispatcher, I'm at my friend's house. Her car is here. Her shoes are here, and I can't find her. Officer Coonrod from the Frederick Police Department arrived at 1:40 p.m. If Nicole hadn't made that call, Chris might have had enough time to dispose of Shanann's phone, her purse, and destroy the evidence that eventually nailed him. She literally put the clock on him. All right, guys, pull up a chair because we need to dissect this. This brings us to what is arguably the most analyzed piece of footage in the history of true crime. Officer Coonrod is standing there. Nicole Atkinson is pacing, clearly distressed. And finally, Chris rolls up. He pulls into the driveway in his work truck. Now, watch his demeanor. If your pregnant wife and kids are missing, you are sprinting to that front door. You are screaming their names. But Chris, he strolls up to the officer like he's greeting a buddy at a barbecue. He's calm. Too calm. He opens the front door, and this is crucial. He enters the house alone first. He leaves the cop and Nicole outside for about 60 to 90 seconds. Why? Many believe he was frantically checking to make sure he hadn't left any obvious evidence out in the open. When the officer finally enters, the vibe is eerie. The house is immaculate. But then, they make the discovery that changes everything. Upstairs in the loft, between the cushions of a sofa, They find Shanann's phone. Let me repeat that. Her phone was stuffed between the cushions. Chris tries to play it off. He says, "Oh, she must have forgotten it." But Nicole Atkinson wasn't buying it for a second. In 2018, a social media influencer does not go anywhere without her phone. That phone was her lifeline. Finding it there was basically a death certificate. But the real smoking gun wasn't in the Watts house. It was next door. Enter Nate Trinastic. This guy is the unsung hero of this case. He had a surveillance camera pointed directly at the Watts driveway. Police asked to review the footage, so they all walked over to Nate's house. This scene is claustrophobic. You have the officer, Nate, and Chris all crammed into this tiny living room, watching the footage on a big TV. Pay close attention to Chris Watts in this clip. He cannot watch the screen. He physically turns his body away. He puts his hands on his head. He's shifting his weight, rocking back and forth. He's looking at his phone, texting, trying to look busy. Psychologically, this is called distancing. His brain is screaming, "Don't look at the truth." The video clearly shows Chris backing his truck up to the garage at 5:17 a.m. He loads the truck for nearly an hour. But here is the kicker. The video never shows Shanann or the kids leaving. They never walked out that front door. When the officer steps away for a second, Nate turns to him and whispers the line that sealed Chris's fate. He says, "He's not acting right. He never backs his truck in like that, and he's rocking back and forth. He's nervous." Nate saw right through him. He knew Chris was performing. And honestly, it was a terrible performance. Let's fast forward to Wednesday, August 15th. The atmosphere has shifted. The media trucks are camped out on the lawn. The pressure is suffocating. And Chris, in an act of absolute hubris, he agrees to take a polygraph test with the CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Now, you have to ask yourself, why? Why would a guilty man take a lie detector test? Because narcissists always think they can outsmart the machine. He thought he could control his breathing, control his heart rate, and fool everyone. He walks into that room with Agent Tammy Lee. She's disarming. She's nice. She asks him basic questions to establish a baseline. But then the real test begins. And folks, it wasn't even close. When Agent Lee walks back into the room after analyzing the charts, the air leaves the room. She looks him dead in the eye and says, "Chris, I'm going to be straight with you. You failed." And he didn't just fail. He bombed it. The scoring scale for deception usually flags you at around a -4. Chris Watts scored a -18. That is off the charts. That is screaming, "I did it." But Chris still denies it. He tries to talk his way out of it. This is where Agent Lee and Agent Graham Coder switch tactics. They stop asking, "Did you do it?" and start asking, "Why did it happen?" They use a classic interrogation strategy called minimization. They need to make him feel safe enough to confess. They need to offer him a scenario where he isn't a monster, just a guy who made a mistake. Agent Lee leans in. She speaks softly. She says, "Chris, I don't think you're a bad person. I think something happened. Did Shanann do something? Did she hurt the kids? Were you just protecting them?" This is the masterstroke. She is literally handing him a lifeline. She is giving him a narrative where Shanann is the villain, and he is the victim. You can see the gears turning in his head. He's thinking, if I say yes to this, maybe I don't look like a cold-blooded killer. Maybe they'll understand. But he doesn't crack just yet. He asks to speak to his father, Ronnie Watts, who is in the building. The agents leave the room. Ronnie walks in, and this moment, it's heartbreaking and infuriating all at once. Chris leans forward, his voice trembling, and whispers to his dad, "I killed her." But here's the catch. He sticks to the lie the agents gave him. He tells his dad, and later the police, that he caught Shanann strangling the girls on the baby monitor, and in a fit of rage, he strangled her. It was a lie. A disgusting, cowardly lie to tarnish his dead wife's reputation just to save his own skin. But the police didn't care at that moment. They had the confession. They had the probable cause. And just like that, the handcuffs were slapped on. For a while, the world thought, or maybe hoped, that the Rage Fit story was true. But evidence doesn't lie. And eventually, the mask slipped completely off. The truth, the real truth, is so much darker. It wasn't a sudden snap. It was calculated. We later learned through his attorneys and subsequent interviews that the girls were alive when they left the house. Picture this. He loads Shanann's body into the truck. Then he puts Bella and Celeste, his own daughters, into the back seat. Alive. He drives 45 minutes to a remote oil site called Cervi 319. 45 minutes. That's a long time to think. That's a long time to turn around. But he didn't. He even packed a lunch. He packed snacks. He went through the motions of a normal day while driving his family to their graves. At the site, he did the unthinkable. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave. And to hide the girls, he put them into the oil battery tanks. He chose those tanks because the openings were only 8 inches wide. He thought no one would ever look there. He thought he was erasing his past to start a new future. But justice moved fast. Faced with overwhelming evidence, the GPS data, the camera footage, the failed polygraph, Chris Watts knew he was cornered. To avoid the death penalty, he took a plea deal. On November 19, 2018, just 3 months after the murders, a judge sentenced him to 5 life sentences plus 84 years for unlawful termination of a pregnancy. No possibility of parole. In the courtroom, Shanann's family, the Razucheks, showed a strength that Chris never had. They looked the monster in the eye. Shanann's mother said, "I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them." It was gut-wrenching. Today, Chris Watts sits in a maximum security prison in Wisconsin. He is locked away 23 hours a day. He has nothing but time to think about the perfect life he destroyed. Shanann, Bella, and Celeste aren't here anymore. But their story is, and it serves as a terrifying reminder that sometimes the most dangerous people aren't the strangers lurking in the dark. Sometimes they are the ones smiling in the family photos. That's it for this deep dive into the Watts family case. It's a heavy one, I know. If you appreciated the research and the storytelling, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Let me know in the comments. Do you think there were red flags that people missed? Until next time, stay safe, stay observant, and take care of each other. This is Alfenom, signing off.